I never thought I'd run to Reddit for advice, but here I am. I don't know the next step to take right now. My husband found out about my secret affair, and then he set a trap for me and my app. My husband, Vikram, funny 40, is the definition of an alpha male husband. He's a successful man who likes to be in charge. He never likes to lose control of a situation. So when he found out I was cheating on him, he found a way to make me regret it. And my husband and I, Kamal, 32, have been married for the past 10 years. We have 2 children together, a 5-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. I know a lot of people will feel the need to judge me for cheating on my husband when I have a complete family, but I have never really felt complete in my marriage. Marriage is supposed to make one feel complete, happy, and content, but I have never really experienced any of these things with my husband. Happiness became a strange feeling to me almost every day. The only light I was fortunate to see was the birth of my 2 children who completed me in a way, but even that too wasn't enough. When my children go to school, I'm welcomed by that feeling of emptiness all over again. It's not helped that the husband I married does not even notice that. He's a perfectionist who's focused on being at the top and keeping his 6 figures constant. I needed more, so I had to search elsewhere. It was a decision that took a lot of courage and self-doubt, but I had to do it for myself. What I never expected was the consequences that followed. I am a mixed woman from Mumbai, India. My mother is from Canada while my father is from India. Growing up with both ethnicities was a little bit of trouble for me. On one hand, I had my strict father who restricted almost all my activities, and on the other hand, I had my strict mother who did not want to restrict my activities just to spite my father. Yes, I practically grew up in a broken home with barely any love and attention. I grew up doing stupid things just to see if my mother would look into my eyes and tell me how much she cared for me. None of that ever happened. My father, he practically ignored my existence every single day. When I was old enough to get married, my father insisted that he would arrange my marriage for me. I did not want that. I just wanted to go to college, a place far away from my parents, then get my freedom and fall in love with a man I actually like. But none of those desires came true. I was to do exactly what my parents wanted me to do. I could not run away. They would have found me. My father worked at an airport. Of course, he had connections. How would I board a flight and not be seen? I had been desperate to get away, but I was not stupid. I ran to my mother for help, but she told me there was nothing she could do. The first and only time my mother was not ready to fight my father was when I needed her to fight him the most. She turned her back on me and did not look back. The first meeting with Vikram and his family was one of the most depressing moments of my life. Even though I knew I was getting into an arranged marriage, I still expected my husband to show me some sort of friendliness. Instead, Vikram was guarded. He did not even try to impress me. Yeah, I was dressed up extravagantly and forced to take etiquette classes so I could make an impression. 2 more meetings later, my marriage with Vikram was finalized. I had no say in it. I could not even choose the color I wanted to wear on my own wedding day. The man I was meant to marry had not even spoken a single word to me before our marriage. Like I felt suffocated because I began to feel like I didn't truly deserve to be happy. I always thought my marriage would make up for all the happiness I lacked as a child. Vikram was good looking and wealthy, but none of that really mattered to me. I wanted to know who he was inside. I wanted to connect with my husband on an emotional level, but Vikram did not look like someone who was ready for that on our wedding day. My parents pulled me to the side and warned me not to do anything during the wedding. They were afraid I'd change my mind and run away. I felt like laughing at that very moment. I thought they wanted to at least hug me and tell me how much they'll miss me. Even if it was a lie, I wanted to hear them say it. None of that happened. All I got was threats and unnecessary talks about being a dutiful wife. After the wedding, I was told that Vikram and I were going to move to Australia. Yes, I was only informed after the marriage. No one told me I'd be moving before the wedding. Maybe they thought it wasn't important since my opinion would not matter anyway. And my wedding was horrible. My wedding night had to be miserable. I was a virgin. Yes, I was a very shy virgin who hadn't even kissed a boy's cheek before. I did not know what to expect that night. So I was a nervous mess. When Vikram and I got to our hotel room, he just turned off the lights and went to sleep. No, I did not feel relieved. I felt stuck. It's not because he did not touch me. Didn't even know anything about sex back then. What hurt me was the fact that the man I married could not even start a conversation with me. I tried talking to him on our way to the hotel that night, but I could just tell that his replies were forced and uninterested. He did not even tell me good night before he laid down on the bed and fell asleep that night. As a girl who was already quite damaged, I felt like I had made the biggest decision of my life by marrying a stranger. Do you know what the worst part was? It was not even my decision at all. My parents chose him for me. When Vikram and I moved to Australia, tried to start a new life there. Even though I was quite disappointed in the husband I got, I was determined to make our marriage work. I tried starting conversations with him, making jokes, and even disturbing him while he was busy working. So this worked for a while, and he warmed up to me a little. When I say he warmed up, I meant in his own little way. He would answer my questions, laugh at my jokes, and lean into my touches with time. We were friendly enough to start sleeping together. That was how I got my two wonderful children. Vikram and I would have sex 3 times a week or more if we wanted. We'd also talk about random things and joke with each other, but that was it. He was no longer a stranger physically and mentally, but emotionally he was. For many months, I felt like I was greedy for not feeling complete. I felt like he was trying his best to warm up to me, yet I was the one who wasn't satisfied. I actually felt guilty for not being happy. It's something I struggled with internally for a long time. I actually began to hate myself because I was a housewife who just stayed home and awaited her husband's return just so she could feel validated. I saw my daughter and son brought some light into my life when they were born. Their births were 2 years apart, but they play like twins. I love them with every single vein in me. They stopped my emotional problems for a while, but even that was temporary. When they were old enough to go to school, my loneliness came back. I would dwell in my sad thoughts for hours before they returned. What I struggled most with was understanding what love meant. I grew up without love, so I could never really understand what it was or recognize when I was at the receiving end of it. For a long time, I thought my husband loved me and I loved him too, but one day I realized that all we had was an understanding, and understand that we were stuck together for life. So we better not make each other's life difficult. That was when I made my decision. I took the first independent step of my whole life 2 years ago when my husband came back from work, and I told him I wanted to start going to college. He was surprised at my request and did not even take me seriously until I told him the same thing 2 days later. At first, he tried to talk me out of it and talk about how the children needed me, but I told him the children had school and extra lessons. He told me that he earned enough to take us a lifetime, so I should not bother getting into college. He insisted that college was important for me, and it was not about getting a career to make money. After a lot of deliberation and a series of phone calls, yes, he called my parents and his parents to ask for permission. I was finally allowed to start college. When I started college, a part of me felt light and happy. I was already 30 then, but I did not care. I now had something to look forward to every day. I made new friends and learned to laugh a little. College felt like a place to spread my wings and fly as high as I wanted. One day after classes, a guy named Freed, 1828, offered to give me a lift. I politely declined because I already had a car that was designated to drive me home, but Fred was not ready to take no for an answer. He got out of his car and practically begged me to let him give me a ride. I found the situation funny and ridiculous, so I declined once again and left in my designated car. From that day, Fred kept offering me a ride home. At some point, after 2 weeks, I sent my car back and gave in. Feed was so happy. There had been a huge smile on his face. We chatted during the ride home and honestly felt nice to meet someone new. Fred drove me home. The weeks that followed after that, it was not a problem because Vikram was not usually home till 9 p.m. in the night. I closed from college at 5 p.m. Fred and I became friends after 1 month of getting to know each other. It felt nice to have a friend, someone to talk to, and someone who actually wanted to know you without a reason behind it. I could tell that there was a physical attraction between us, but I tried to brush it off because I was still very married to Vikram. I really did, but for a woman who had been deprived of real love all her life, my resistance was not strong enough. One day, Fred and I kissed in this car. From that day on, we exchanged kisses in the car, from kisses to tight hugs, then smooching on day sex. The day it happened, I'd been so shocked that I did not move for a long time. Yes, it happened in his car. It was at that moment I realized I really didn't love my husband, because after it happened, I did not feel any form of regret or shame. I felt liberated and full. I liked it so much I was not afraid to do it again. Fine. It's not something I'm ashamed of saying because I deserve to be happy. I deserve to live a content life. Fred and I continued our secret relationship for one more year. I told him I was married long before we got intimate, but he didn't really care. He was okay with the secret moments we shared. Again, a smile, more and live life more purposefully thanks to Fred, but one day it all broke into pieces. On this fateful day, my designated driver came to pick me up. It was an unusual occurrence because I had asked him to stop coming since I usually went home with Fred. The driver insisted and told me he had to drive me home that day. Fred had invited me to his house, so I did not want to disappoint him. I refused to follow my driver and went to Fred's house. My husband was on a business trip and my kids were at Vikram's sister's place, so I did not plan on going back home. Fred cooked dinner for both of us, lit candles, and played some very nice music. It felt like I was in a dream, and to be honest, I didn't really want to wake up. I felt genuinely happy after a long time. I liked the feeling of content I had in that moment. I shared with Fred. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but everything that happened to me in my life had been wrong. I wanted to be selfish for once in my life. Wanted to choose myself, and I did just that. Had a passionate night with a man that was not my husband. The next morning, I woke up in Fred's t-shirt. I was thirsty and went to grab some water to drink from the kitchen. I remember hearing a knock on the door. And when I opened the door, I was shocked to see Vikram standing there. He looked like he could kill me at that moment. I was too shocked to move or say a word. I could see the anger in his eyes that day. The way he glared at me and pushed me out of the way. Fred ran downstairs to see what was happening, and that was when he met Vikram. Vikram punched Fred till he was bleeding. I had been so scared that I started to scream. I got the shock of my life when I saw my designated driver at the door with two policemen. That was when everything seemed to make sense. I realized that Vikram must have noticed that I no longer used my designated driver, so started to keep an eye on me. He lied that he was going on a business trip. He just wanted to follow me and catch me red-handed. The driver had followed Fred's car the night before and told Vikram the address. It was a trap. Vikram found out I was cheating on him, so he set a trap for me and Fred. Vikram always wanted to be in control no matter what. I cheated and got out of his control, so he wanted to catch me in the act his own way. I thought that was all, but Vikram had me and Fred arrested. I know some of you might wonder who gets arrested for cheating. Well, Fred and I got arrested, but it was not for cheating. The police found drugs in Fred's garden and in his car, so we were arrested for the illegal possession of drugs. Of course, it was all framed by Vikram. Fred had a heart condition and could not even smoke. How did drugs suddenly appears, and then Vikram was right there to notice it. Our explanations fell on deaf ears and we were detained for 3 days. It was Fred's friend that got us out on bail. That was 2 months ago. Vikram sent me packing and I was served with divorce papers immediately. The only thing I'm worried about now is my children. They mean a lot to me. I don't want Vikram to get full custody in court. What should I do? Should I beg him to take me back for the sake of my children? Please help me. Update. So it's been a year and I decided to add an update since a lot of people read my story. Fred and I are still together. I live with him. I'm still in college trying to finish up and get a job. Fred has been helpful and he's been taking good care of me. Vikram tried his best to get full custody of our children. He even used his wealth, but the court concluded that the children needed me in their lives. We now co-parent cordially and try to maintain a civil relationship for our children. My parents called me just to disown me over the phone when they found out what happened, but I didn't really care. They were never really loving parents to begin with. The first few months after getting caught were horrible, but I took each day seriously and fought my way out. My life is not perfect, but at least for the first time in my whole existence, I chose myself. That's all that matters to me. I now understand what care and love means. I'd rather live a fulfilled life with nothing than an empty one with everything. I lost my wealthy husband, but I got my peace and happiness, which is priceless. I hope my journey to freedom inspires someone else. The journey ends here, guys. Bye.